This is a video I'm going to attempt to make to correlate the polyvagal system theory and DBT distress tolerance skills. The polyvagal theory is an expansion of our understanding of the fight, flight, freeze, faint, etc. System. And the typical awareness that we have, the um, sympathetic nervous system that causes us to become more alert, and the parasympathetic system that causes us to be calm. The rest and digest or tend and befriend response. So what this picture depicts, and I will be zooming in because it's quite dense, but from the first view of it, what you'll see is a bell curve that is showing increased arousal. If you're in the green band, you're calm. Upon sensing danger, consciously or subconsciously, you begin to become alert and aroused. When it goes past tracking danger to the experience of terror or life threat or extreme shame, then you go into freeze or shutdown. So let me start by enlarging the image to look at the green section. Let's go bottom up. Okay. So if you are looking at this from the polyvagal system, that relates to the vagus nerve, which is a system that connects the brain to all of the organs within the body, and it has a front and a back. The ventral vagal system would be the front, and the dorsal vagal system would be the back. Think of a dorsal fin on a fish. So when you're in the ventral vagal system and calm, this is the social engagement system. So this has to do with co-regulation, that we feel the most safe when we are connected to other people, or vice versa, when we're connected to other people, that helps us feel safe, responsive, engaged, compassionate. This is also when we are in self-energy from a internal family systems perspective. It's also when our whole brain is accessible and connected. We have low emotion, we're calm and relaxed, and we have access to our higher cortex, our frontal cortex executive system. We also remember that we are part of a team, part of a family, part of a relationship, that the context of relationships, and so on. In order to either reinforce being in this state or return to this state, we think of things like deep breathing, incorporating breathing in the belly, moving the diaphragm, and lengthening our exhale. We also think about grounding exercises, and a DBT grounding exercise would be to look around and name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can feel, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste, like raisins, fruit, ginger candy, peppermint tea, something like that. And grounding simply can be done also by standing barefoot on your lawn. Another breathing pattern that can help is the 4-7-8 breathing, where you breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 7 seconds, and breathe out for 8 seconds. Okay. So then you begin to sense danger, whether that is a physical threat or an emotional threat. and that will cause us to um, perhaps recognize a novelty cue, and something new either enters our awareness. We see it or hear it, and like a meerkat, we stop and freeze and look around. Not yet in a way that is upsetting, but is just, it actually interrupts our ability to be socially connected. We're not going to be looking at people's faces anymore. And we might hold our breath briefly, that kind of thing. So, and as our arousal increases, we are in the sympathetic nervous system, um, which mobilizes us to react. We might become more confrontational. We're alert, defensive. We begin to enter high emotion: anger, fear, excitement, love, hate, disgust, frustration. Now, I have also been looking at an interesting thing, which is that we can have left brain anxiety or right brain anxiety, or you could also look at it as amygdala hijack, versus where it starts in the cortex and is more mental. So left brain anxiety is apprehensive, worry-based, distressing thoughts that we're ruminating. This is also where CBT is helpful in terms of looking at thinking errors. But what's missed by CBT is amygdala hijack, where we have right brain anxiety, or the limbic system anxiety. And this is kind of more emotion mind. So it's arousing, it causes us to be vigilant, we're in alertness, we're scanning for danger, and the amygdala is activated. The amygdala is the part of the limbic system that I like to call the policeman. It is scanning and making the decision whether we need to go into fight or flight. So I have this little clock to remind us that um, it only takes 20 seconds or less to enter into fight or flight, but 20 minutes to re-engage the brain, or longer, in order to get back down into the green. So when we're in fight, it is activating and we want to approach the threat to defend ourselves. When we're in flight, it's about self-protection in the sense of get away from a threat and we're retreating. So I have a honey badger that's fighting, and a lizard or lizard brain that is purely instinctual to get out of there fast. And again, we have frontal cortex cutoff or shutdown. Now, there's another part of this level that is called fawn, where I put that what we are doing is fussing, and this is caretaking, people pleasing, peacemaking, or codependency, where we are trying to attend to other people around us in order to avoid conflict and keep things as safe as possible. Okay. So another dynamic or polarization, such as fight or flight, is the fear of abandonment, fear of engulfment, which aren't necessarily correlated, but can be polarized between two people. If you're having a fight or flight response and someone is fearing abandonment, they do not want to stop talking until it's resolved, until they can feel connected again in order to feel safe. Whereas the person fearing engulfment does not want to keep talking because they're feeling violated and intruded upon, and they are desperate to get away from what feels just as upsetting as fear of abandonment. Though the two extremes don't really understand each other, and we all have both, but we'll take on one in a relationship and the other person is forced to take on the other, and sometimes it will flip. And interestingly, fight can be a way to push the other person away from us if we are fearing engulfment. Um, or flight can also be a response to fear of engulfment. So I suppose it can go either way. All right. So we enter up into the pink zone when we feel that none of those strategies can work and we're trapped and it's hopeless, and um, the next thing that's going to happen is that we're going to die or feel so much shame that we feel suicidal. Now, this can take two extremes. Let's go to look at the one on the left, which is when we go into freeze. And that is like a step up from the meerkat novelty cue. Now it is an overwhelm cue. We are still orienting and we're vigilant, but to the point of hypervigilance, and we can't turn it off. So this can be referred to as failed inhibition, ventral vagal withdrawal without SNS, I believe. Uh, I'm not sure exactly. I'll have to amend what are they talking about there, but it's where you're frozen and flooded. Now, this could also represent the PTSD pendulum between flooded and numbing. And if we go over to the right extreme, this is over inhibition, where like a possum we play dead. The other one was obviously deer in the headlights, where we collapse. And this is called the dorsal vagal system shutdown, the primitive system, where we're immobilized, frozen, dissociated, numb. We have an averted gaze and flat affect. So we just look like we left. And that can be referred to as fold, flag, or faint. And it's parasympathetic over inhibition. So we've got these extremes of failed inhibition or over inhibition. Now we can also put numbing behaviors in here, such as addictions and self-harm, depending on if it causes release of endorphins. Okay, so let's zoom back out for a second. If we can. Okay, so what do we do about this? DBT is a lot about opposite action, and so let's start over here on the left with the first two DBT distress tolerance skills of stop and tip. So once we are aware that we are going into fight or flight, we can use the skill stop, which is to stop, think, observe, and proceed mindfully. Read more about that skill or watch a video that I will link in the description. And this is to try to interrupt the severe amygdala hijack so that you can be returning quicker to accessing your frontal cortex so that you can remember other DBT skills. So stop is a good one to have posted somewhere or as a picture in your phone. All right, so then tip is temperature, intense exercise, paced breathing, and paired muscle relaxation, which is also good for amygdala hijack. Temperature is about interrupting the fight or flight heightened autonomic nervous system arousal by replicating the dive response. You can put your face in a bowl or basin of cold ice water, hold your breath and keep your face in there for 30 to 60 seconds. If you do not have access to cold water, you can use an ice pack and bend over and put your face against it around the eyes and cheeks, so that you are fooling the body into thinking that you're just dove into cold water. Intense exercise is to burn off the adrenaline that is um, uh, released as a part of fight or flight. Paced breathing is the 4-7-8 breathing or other breathing where you are really slowing down the number of breaths you're taking and lengthening the exhale. And paired muscle relaxation is where when you breathe in, you tense all of your muscles, and you breathe out and you relax and loosen them progressively from your toes to your head, or if you prefer, you can go the other direction, but going through each muscle group. Okay. So again, in terms of opposite action, when you are in the fight response, there's a great video called Fear Melters by Hendricks, and she talks about doing the opposite of the tense muscles by practicing the skill ooze, which is let yourself spread out into time, begin to move slowly as if you are thick syrup or warm chocolate oozing off a spoon. Move your shoulders and hips and even your jaw and slow your words down. Now, if you're in left brain anxiety, some tips to help with this could also be in the cortex, anxiety or panic that's cerebral, not cerebral, but mental. Let go of concerns about what others think. Remember, it's only a feeling. Don't focus on panic attacks or typos, and distract yourself. So this comes from a book called Rewire Your Anxious Brain. So a distract skill from DBT is distract with wise mind accepts. And that's through using activities, contribution to others, health or well-being, comparison of your experience now to the past or the future or to others. Engaging in something emotional that is opposite to anxiety, so humor, for example, pushing away the thought for a while, doing something mental with your thoughts, like a puzzle or word find or something like that, and sensations, another typo, excuse that, would be also related to changing temperature, holding an ice cube, or slapping your hand on a counter, something where you have an intense sensation to react to. Okay, so opposite action to when you're in flight from the fear melters is to do a skill called sumo. So you'll notice when you're in flight and you're repressing it that your body will actually turn subtly towards the door. Another way that you could be in flight is to begin to dissociate, where you just sort of mentally check out. But sumo, the skill would be to widen your stance, ground your feet firmly into the floor, bend your knees, and put your hands on your knees as if you're a sumo wrestler. Also, the yoga mountain pose. Feel your weight and push down with your feet. And then we go up into the freeze or faint, inhibition extremes. When you're in freeze, again, it's an overwhelm cue, and you have failed inhibition. So the fear melter is to wiggle. When you're frozen, you're not moving at all. So begin to wiggle your fingers and toes, and slowly you'll eventually begin to wiggle your hips and your shoulders. So you're breaking up the physical deer in the headlights frozen stance. When you're in fold, flag, or faint, which is the collapse or shutdown dorsal vagal response, The fear melter would be to reach and gather. Begin to reach out into the air as if you are gathering energy and bring your hands towards you, touching your chest or heart area. This particular one I relate to because in a relationship with a parent, I would feel approval being uh, withdrawn and rejection, fear of abandonment. And I would literally feel like I was going to faint, like I couldn't breathe. I don't think I did faint, but that's the feeling I would have. So I really think this reach and gather is about scooping up love, scooping up the sense that there is um, those things that are feeling in lacking when, particularly if you go into this collapse from a shame overload. Um, so bringing love to yourself, self-validation in the physical experience of holding your own heart. Okay, so some other little tidbits that I put on here is um, the breath of fire would be the opposite of trying to do that original deep diaphragmatic breathing. When you are in shutdown or fold, um, you actually can energize through doing short, rapid inhalations, which is a yoga uh, exercise called Breath of Fire that you can look up more information about. Um, some general suggestions to kind of return to the green zone, uh, first that come from Radically Open DBT, are to use big expansive gestures. So that's another way of moving out of generally frozen, tense muscle responses to fight, flight, freeze. Vision is gazing at pictures of pets and landscapes, or maybe people you love. Using hearing, jumping down here, listening to music, in particular the human voice. So even books on tape, or this might be why people leave the TV on, is it's calming and part of the social engagement system to hear the human voice. So back up to moving your facial muscles is another way to counteract being frozen. Um, and it conveys to other people that you are open and not trying to mask your feelings. Deliberately breathing more deeply, we've covered. Um, Deliberately tense and relax large muscle groups, we covered as progressive muscle relaxation. Using touch, deep pressure, massage, and hugs are all grounding and reconnecting to the social safety system. Okay, a few other suggestions about anxiety. Use relaxation, sleep, and exercise to reduce sympathetic nervous system activation. Monitor your thinking for any anxiety igniting thoughts. Replace anxiety igniting thoughts with coping thoughts. Determine your life goals and what interferes with them. Identify triggers of fear and anxiety. Design exposure exercises to modify amygdala response. And practice exposure exercises. Now let me check if I missed anything else. I don't think so. So that does not include one more skill from DBT, which is improve the moment, and another which is self-soothe with your five senses. But those are about comforting yourself when you improve the moment through imagery and meaning, prayer, one-mindedness, a brief vacation, and I think opposite emotion, although that might not be it. And then self-soothing with your five senses is it pretty straight forward. So once you've done the grounding exercise of looking around at the senses, you could create a self-soothing kit or a list of ways that you prefer to soothe through something beautiful that you can see, something soothing that you can listen to, create a playlist um, to elicit the emotion you would like, um, and smells through aromatherapy or the scents you choose in your lotions, and um, tea, different smells from tea. Taste would again be something like ginger candy, mints, raisins, something, gum, small piece of quality chocolate. And touch is putting lotions on, bubble baths, warm pajamas right out of the dryer, clean sheets, and that kind of stuff. So I hope that this helps you orient towards when to use what type